Imagine an empire that stretched from the frozen Arctic to the mountains of Asia. An empire so vast it looked unstoppable. Yet beneath its glittering crown, cracks were spreading. By the early 1900s, Russia was still a great power on maps. But in reality, it was a giant with feet of clay. And these fractures inside Russia wouldn't just shape its own destiny, they would help set the stage for World War I. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our deep dives into the untold stories of history's greatest conflicts. At the dawn of the 20th century, the Russian Empire appeared unstoppable. On paper, it had land, armies, and influence that rivaled any European nation. But peel back that polished surface, and you'd find a country struggling to modernize, torn between centuries-old traditions and the demands of a new industrial age. Unlike Britain, France, or Germany, where factories, railroads, and political reform were accelerating, Russia remained stuck in a system ruled by absolute monarchy and rural poverty. The Tsar's government clung to power through outdated institutions, while much of the population was tied to the land in near-feudal conditions. Back in 1861, Tsar Alexander II had abolished serfdom, promising peasants freedom. But the reality was far less generous. Most peasants gained no real ownership of land. Instead, they lived under a system called the mir, a communal structure where land was shared, redistributed, and strictly controlled. It sounded fair in theory, but in practice it chained peasants to poverty. They couldn't buy, sell, or invest in their land. Productivity stayed low, innovation stalled, and resentment grew. By the early 1900s, millions of peasants lived in hunger while the empire boasted about modernization. In the 1890s, Finance Minister Sergei Vita pushed a bold plan: rapid industrialization. Railways expanded, factories rose, and foreign money, especially French investment, poured into Russia. The Trans-Siberian Railway symbolized this ambition, stretching across the empire like a steel spine. But growth came at a cost. While Moscow and St. Petersburg developed, most rural regions were left behind. The poor paid heavy taxes while the elite thrived. A new working class emerged in cities demanding better wages, rights, and representation. Tension was building like steam in a boiler, and it was only a matter of time before it exploded. Enter Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia. He came to the throne in 1894 at just 26 years old, educated, polite, deeply devoted to his family, but completely unprepared to rule. Nicholas believed firmly in absolute monarchy, that he ruled by divine right. He distrusted reform, dismissed parliament, and surrounded himself with a small circle of advisors, including his wife Alexandra and the infamous mystic Rasputin. While factories smoked and peasants starved, Nicholas lived in the glittering palaces of St. Petersburg, disconnected from his people. The Tsar wasn't cruel by nature, but he was indecisive and blind to the realities of his crumbling empire, and history would not forgive him. In 1904, Russia entered a war it thought would be quick and easy, a conflict with Japan over control of Korea and Manchuria. Russia expected victory. It was, after all, a European giant facing a smaller Asian nation. But Japan was ready. Its navy struck first at Port Arthur, catching Russia off guard. The war spiraled into disaster for the Tsar's forces. The most humiliating blow came at the Battle of Tsushima in 1905, when Japan annihilated the Russian fleet. Out of 38 Russian warships, Almost all were sunk or captured. This wasn't just a military defeat, it was a shock to the world. For the first time, an Asian power had crushed a European empire. Russia's prestige collapsed, and at home, anger boiled into open revolt. In 1905, workers went on strike, peasants rose up, and soldiers mutinied. Nicholas II was forced to issue the October Manifesto, creating a parliament called the Duma. On paper, this looked like progress, but in practice, the Tsar kept most of the power for himself. The Duma was weak, reforms were limited, and frustration only deepened. Revolutionaries, socialists, Mensheviks, and Bolsheviks began gaining momentum. The empire was becoming a ticking time bomb. Meanwhile, foreign policy made things even more dangerous. For years, Germany and Russia had maintained a cautious friendship. But when Germany refused to renew a treaty in 1890, Russia turned to France instead. By 1894, the Franco-Russian alliance was born. This meant that in any future war, Germany risked fighting enemies on both its western and eastern borders. The balance of power in Europe had shifted, and not in Germany's favor. The Balkans, often called the powder keg of Europe, added fuel to the fire. Russia saw itself as the protector of Slavic nations like Serbia, while Austria-Hungary feared Slavic nationalism could tear its empire apart. At the same time, the Ottoman Empire was weakening, and Germany was moving in with influence, railways, and military advisors. For Russia, this was alarming, especially when it came to the vital Black Sea trade routes through the Bosporus and Dardanelles. In short, every empire had interests in the Balkans, and every empire was willing to fight for them. The story of Russia before World War I is one of illusions. An empire that looked powerful but was cracking under its own weight. A czar who believed in divine right but ignored the cries of his people. And a nation caught between past and future, unable to choose either. These contradictions didn't just shape Russia, they helped shape the entire world. Because when war finally came in 1914, the Russian Empire would be both a major player and one of its biggest casualties. If you're enjoying this journey through history, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next episode, where we explore how the assassination of one man lit the fuse that plunged the world into war.